I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Susquehanna Township Board of Commissioners Legislative Session, June 14th, 2018. I would note that all commissioners are present and accounted for. Begin with a Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence, and would ask that the pledge tonight be led by Public Safety Director Martin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everybody. And before we get into our regular agenda, I'd like to take care of one piece of business, long time in coming. And I would ask Commissioner Engel and Public Safety Director Martin to join me at the podium. Yeah, we're here tonight to, of course, have our regular meeting and conduct the business of the township, but also to commemorate a time in someone's career and in the history of this township, and we're talking about Rob Martin. I got on this board 16 years ago, and in that time, I already thought he should have been commemorated because I'd only been on the board a brief period of time. But at that point, he was one of the youngest, most successful chiefs of police in central Pennsylvania. He was a member and leader of the SWAT, now CRT, and this was one of the most admired police departments in all of central Pennsylvania. If you fast forward, he's no longer as young as he was 16 years ago, but he's still with us. He's still a leader on the CRT. He's introduced school resource officers, quite necessary in these changing times in our public education system. He's pioneered community policing in central Pennsylvania. In addition to that, to being a father, husband, he's coached young people, including RBI baseball for inner city youth, and he coached a high school team for a number of years, including the championship team. Rob Martin is a true asset to Susquehanna Township, and for me personally, he's been a steadying force and a source of wisdom for my own service on the Board of Commissioners. So I'd like to thank him, and before we get him up to say a few words, call up Commissioner Engel, our police commissioner, to say a few words and present a token of our appreciation. Fred?
Thank you. Rob, please step up. It's my honor and privilege to be able to present you with this plaque this evening. I've known Rob my entire law enforcement career, and he is the premier law enforcement officer, I believe, not only in this region, but probably across the state. He's an awesome guy, a true professional. His officers love him, they do anything for him, and he deserves it big time. So, on behalf of Susquehanna Township, I'd like to present to you Robert A. Martin to commemorate 20 years of dedicated service as Chief of Police for the Susquehanna Township Police Department.
Well deserved. And in introducing our chief and public safety director, I would only warn you not to call him Bob.
I usually have speeches for these types of moments, but since I was surprised, it wasn't until I sat down that I looked across and saw my wife. It's like, that's a giveaway of something. And I want to thank her. It hasn't been easy for her throughout my career. Not used to being speechless, but I am. But to the Board of Commissioners, thank you. I love this township, and I believe in this township, and I have hope for this township. because I know the people who live here. And I'm blessed that I know a lot of them personally, and that they know me. I have my own notions of what my profession should be, and sometimes I stand alone. Sometimes I stand in a crowded room, and that's good. Believe in this country, and I believe that I believe in a life of service, and I'm happy to. I know my mom's proud, and so I hope I've made a difference in this township and given back. And I just want to end with, I just have such gratitude for my 30 years of service here. Yeah, it's kind of odd, it's kind of strange when you've been somewhere so long. And I drove in recently down Lingelstown Road, and I was like, it's hard to believe I've been driving to this building 30 years. But it still seems like it's rather new to me, to be honest with you. I still work very hard. I believe in hard work. I believe that there's dignity in any work. And I didn't see this coming. So I'm a little starstruck. So Dave, thank you. Thank you for the opportunities you've given me. And they've been many. And some of the changes that I've been able to add to my daily walk here at the township. Variety's the spice of life, and Dave's allowed me to have a little bit more variety in my walk, and it's meant the world to me, it really has. So I'm blessed to still be here. And with that, I just want to thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, did we get a chance to make one remark?
Absolutely.
Just one, though.
Just one? I got to tell you, I'm going to make two. I got to tell you.
Of course.
Yeah, I asked for the one, and I figure I help myself. But I got to tell you something. Before I became a commissioner, and I was talking to a lady one day, and I said, I live in Susquehanna Township, and I didn't know Chief Martin. And when I said Susquehanna Township, she was like, you know what, you guys got a really nice chief out there. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you who it was. Her name is Dr. Lavette Page. I don't know if you know her. But just from saying I lived in Susquehanna Township. So I didn't know the chief, but I saw you on TV. And I was like, yeah, I think he's probably a pretty nice guy. I saw you talking, and I liked your response. So I didn't know you then. But I got to tell you one other thing. And so before I became a commissioner, there was a helicopter circling out in Edgemont, or police. Yeah, it was a helicopter. And I remember I called you. I didn't expect you to give me an answer, especially a truthful answer. I expected you to give me a bunch of bull, actually. He told me exactly what the problem was and why there was a helicopter. And I didn't know you then, and just from that moment, just over the phone and having never met you, I had so much respect for you. And you have actually lived up to that ever since I've met you. You've lived up to that. And I think that speaks a lot about you, because you didn't know who I was. All I was just a person on the phone calling, and you treated me like I was, like I was a commissioner, even when I wasn't one. And I just want to say it's been my honor and my privilege to know you, and I look forward 30 more years. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, if I may, I too have a story. Before I was a commissioner, our family, there was something going on in our neighborhood, and we had to put a call in to the police, and we were surprised when who shows up at our door, and it wasn't anything really, really major, but it was Chief Martin, and we were so impressed. We thought, wow, the chief of police showing up at our house, for this minor thing, but that's just the kind of person Chief Martin is. He walks the walk and talks the talk, and we're proud to have you here. And the other thing I will say is that I know you probably know you've touched a lot of lives and improved a lot of lives, but it goes on, and those ripples in the pond that you've started really carry on for generations, I think. Thank you.
Mr. President, if I can jump in here, I just want to say thank you to Chief for your great examples of two important virtues, and that's service and integrity. I think that we've been able to see service to individual township residents and to the community as a whole. I can remember my wife was in a car accident not too long ago, and I was in the emergency room, and I was getting texts from Chief asking me how she was doing. So that sense of service, and I know other residents around the township feel the same way. But integrity is something that I think is much needed in public officials at elected level as well as the appointed level, and you've shown that with great distinction, and I thank you for that especially. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. You have a lot of fans in Susquehanna Township, Chief, and in a lot of ways you define Susquehanna Township because you helped make it. 30 years is a long time. It's about half of our existence as a first-class township. When you think about it, that's been you. You've been a mainstay, and I've yet to meet anybody that I know that doesn't speak very highly of you, that knows you. And that's quite a tribute to 30 years because we all make mistakes in 30 years. And Mrs. Martin, thank you, because most of this would not have been possible without the support that you and the family have provided. So thank you.
Can I say one quick thing,
Sure.
Mr. President? I'm sorry. So one of the things I've learned since becoming commissioner is that Chief Martin is an extraordinarily well-read individual. And he will, just on a random Sunday, just text me a quote from Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, just something to think about. And I was watching a documentary recently on 1968, and I know Chief looks up to Robert Kennedy a great deal. And so as Chief was talking about service, I was reminded about something that Ted Kennedy said about his brother when he eulogized him. And I think it applies to Chief Martin. So it's, and Chief is still here with us, thank God. But to be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it. And I think that's what Chief has done every day in his 30 years in this township, and certainly in his 20 years as chief. And I think we thank him for his service. And again, like everyone else is saying, I mean, just interactions with people. I have a coworker who was with the Attorney General's office and knows you by reputation. She lives in Palmyra. So, I mean, you're known countywide, regionally, statewide, certainly, and we are blessed and honored to still have you here. And speaking for myself here, we'll take you as long as we can have you, Chief. So, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner.
I'll be last. Even though he is from the Navy, I hope that again, being that I'm from the Army. But my experience with Chief has been consistent throughout the years that I've been here as a commissioner. And like the young commissioner said, that he does send us text messages every weekend about something different, or he wants you to read. But my experience was, prior to me coming on the board, I worked as a youth counselor at the Schaffner Youth Center. And there was a young individual whose family I knew, and one of the kids played on Chief's RBI league. And that young man took a wrong path. But through baseball, he became very successful. He must have been under the Chief's wing, because that young man ended up graduating from Penn State main campus and received his degree and is doing very well. And he speaks very highly of you, Chief. And one day I'll tell you his name, who he is. He probably already have it figured out. But thank you, Chief. You've been a huge mentor to a lot of kids. I've even brought kids to Chief in his office, and we sat there and scared those kids to death.
Scared straight?
Yes, the little Scared Straight program we had going on. But you've always been there for me, Chief, and I appreciate it. If there's anything I can do for you, please do not hesitate to call. Thank you.
All right. Enough? Thank you, Chief. Moving on, petitions, complaints, suggestions from citizens. Do we have anybody that wishes to address the board tonight? Yes. Step forward, identify yourself, and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes.
I will. Good evening. My name is David Schutte. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Pepper Hamilton. We represent Cherry Orchard Place, LLC. With me this evening is Chris Durr, who's with the NRP Group, which is the parent company of Cherry Orchard. Cherry Orchard is under agreement to purchase the 3.29-acre parcel, which is Lot 2 at the 2323 Linglestown Road subdivision. The property is intended to be developed as a senior living facility. And the planning for the development started in around 2014, and I think this board will remember in March 12th of 2015, this board adopted an ordinance presented by Ralph Vartan on behalf of the property owner, the Bonerati Trust, to amend the text of the zoning ordinance with respect to senior living facilities as to density, number of units per building, and minimum off-street parking. Specific to the parking, the ratio is reduced from 2 spaces per every 1 unit, which is the minimum parking requirements for all residential dwellings, to 1.1 spaces per 1 unit of senior living facilities. And it was based upon the general understanding that senior living facilities need less parking, and that you'd end up having lots of unused parking lot space if you kept with the 2-for-1 ratio. That ordinance, though, ordinance 2015-3, though, unfortunately for us in this situation right now, is applicable to senior living facilities with, quote, more than 50 units. When the ordinance was being discussed and during the early planning phases of the Cherry Orchard development, the unit count was 60, and that's what a planning module was submitted for DEP, and that's what the ordinance was based on when it was requested by Mr. Vartan as well. And tax credits through PHFA were applied for, and the good news is that the tax credits were approved. However, due to some changes in the planning, due to the engineering, due to the desire of efficiencies for the building, and some other matters that I'll let Mr. Durr describe if he can for just a second or two, the unit count for the planned building is now 49, which means that the reduction in parking ratio is not applicable to the development, and it would require 98 parking spaces, and if it would have 51 units, it would then only require 57 parking spaces. So there's a 41 extra spaces due to 2 less units. So earlier this week, I submitted a letter to this board requesting that the process begin on a text amendment to the zoning ordinance to further amend the parking ratio required for a senior living facility, and basically just change the language of more than 50 to more than 45, so that we do not end up with a development that has unused parking spaces. The project will likely still go forward under whatever ordinance is available, but the unit count at 49 is based upon both the financing and upon the desired efficiencies of the development, and it would require, again, 98 parking spaces, which would probably be 41 too many. Chris, do you want to speak real quickly about why the unit count was changed?
Sure. I'm Chris Durr. I appreciate your time this evening, folks. And really, we come here to you. You've been great partners in the development. We're really pleased to have secured financing for the development. And in light of the partnership, we wanted to come and kind of seek your guidance. I think a text amendment is one idea, but we're open to other ideas. The unit count really was impacted by two things. One, and developments all take a life of their own as they move through the process. There was a change in the tax code, which made the tax credits less advantageous, so it pushed the unit count down. The second thing is we really pushed to make the development what's called a passive house, which makes it more energy efficient. And by passive house, what that means is that the envelope of the building is tighter, triple pane windows, thicker walls, and that was in an effort to kind of replicate what we had seen through the community, which was an effort to have greater green buildings, greater green efficiency, and was in keeping with the reduction in the parking ratio. The outcome of doing a passive house is it's more expensive. So when the tax code changed and the unit count was out of necessity pushed down to 49 units. So kind of seeking your guidance. We think that text amendment is one way to address it, but you may come back and say, we don't want to do the text amendment, we'll put the parking in. Just seems inconsistent to have a passive house design building with this extra parking there. So that is why we're before you today. Thank you very much. I'm open for questions if you have any.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
I'm curious why you didn't ask for a variance for this one instance rather than asking us to change our entire ordinance.
Yes,
Sure.
Again, I'll answer that. I think in this instance, I think a text amendment would be probably cleaner and the more correct path. A variance before the zoning hearing board would require proof of an actual hardship. Not sure if the hardship's necessarily there, and your zoning hearing board does take its job very seriously. Whether a variance would be granted or not is certainly it's a quasi-judicial question for your zoning hearing board. Text amendment is a legislative process, and seeing as how it's a minor change to the existing ordinance, and in recognition of the reasoning that was used in adopting ordinance 2015-3 already, that the text amendment seems to make more sense. But certainly a variance would be an available alternative.
Well, do you have room for 98 parking spaces?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the other question kind of raised in my mind was, I think the question raised in my mind was, we have this challenge. There may be another development that wants to do a 45-unit development, and they would have the same thing to encounter, same thing to wrestle with. The reality of, gee, if we got 45 units, you've got to put 90-something spaces. If you've got 51 units, you can put less spaces. So I'm not sure. Again, we're seeking guidance from you. You may say, we think variance is the right way, in which case we would proceed, and if we were not successful with the variance, then we would just put the parking in.
Well, I think it's one of those things where wherever you draw the line, so we lower it to 45, then 2 weeks from now, we'll get somebody to come in and wants to do 44, so can you change your,
Yeah,
your
sure.
ordinance
So
again?
I think that that's true. I think that there is one of the other opportunities that this development provided is because we're putting an elevator into the building. It's a multi-story building. We're putting an elevator in. And when you get below a certain number, it doesn't make sense to have the infrastructure cost of putting that elevator in. And that number is really that 50 some odd units.
Well,
But
I
we
would
just
argue with you on that. There's a elderly, low-income housing unit in Liverpool of 18 units that had an elevator, and the developer was very happy to put it in, I can tell you.
Yeah, so I think they probably did it. There was a cost to that. And the challenge with senior development is if you don't put an elevator in, then those are the most challenging units to lease. Sure.
The correspondence that I provided to you earlier in the week requests action to be taken tonight to move the text amendment along to the Planning Commission. I can understand those, since given the late arrival of the letter and probably need to understand this a little bit more, and probably need for us to discuss this matter with the staff to hold off on any action this evening, and maybe come back to this at the next meeting.
So what are you asking for?
Well,
Proceed or not proceed?
I'm asking you to proceed with the text amendment if possible, but if you'd like to table it, that's certainly an option as well.
Okay, well, we can't table it because a motion has been made.
Right,
and
understood.
seconded. Nor can we take motions during the public comment period,
Right.
which you're in now. So if there is a motion made, it would come under the report of committees, so planning and zoning.
Okay.
So if there is a motion and a second, then we'll deal with it then.
Wait till then.
But otherwise, I appreciate your comments.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else wish to address the board tonight? Okay, hearing none. Approval of minutes, May 10th, 2018. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Oh, second.
Moved and seconded. Any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Reports committees, Buildings and Grounds, Commissioner Rothrock.
I have no report, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Budget, Commissioner Sanderson.
Yes, thank you. Very briefly. Budget Committee has met and has begun, as I've been describing. We are now looking at a 5-year rolling budget, as we have done in the past. We have a lot of detail. Please keep your hand off that. It's driving me crazy.
Right here.
Crinkling. Plastic bottles. Yeah.
Super.
Yeah. And
That's a really good report, by the way.
you're welcome.
Keep going.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And we have a lot of detail to discuss. So what I will be doing is asking staff to provide this detail that the Budget Committee has reviewed to the board as a whole. And you will have this, and we will be discussing these this year's budget and these coming budgets in the near future. So everyone will have the budget very, very soon. So the normal process is being extended. Normally we begin in late August, early September. This year we're starting in June. So that's my report. Thank you.
Excellent report. Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Public Work, Commissioner Napper.
I don't know if I can top his. Mr. President, the Public Works Department report for the month of May. Public Works Department made repairs to inlet signs, mowed grass in parks and berms throughout the township. Staff flushed sewer lines as well as checked various manholes and troubled sewer lines. Preventive maintenance was performed on all the pumping stations throughout the township. And as a final note, Mr. President, the Public Works Department began street sweeping on Monday, May 7th. For more information on street sweeping schedule for 2018 this summer, see the township website. This ends my report, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Health and Sanitation, Commissioner Barczak.
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Administration Personnel, Commissioner Napper.
Yes, just real quick, the Admin Personnel Committee met with this evening just to discuss the, I say a survey, compensation survey with one of our consultants. Anything else you want to add, Town Manager?
No, I don't think so.
That's
We
simple.
can distribute the information that was distributed, if Commissioner, if you're okay with that.
Yes, sir.
Distribute it to the full board?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir.
Police, Commissioner Engel.
No report.
Thank you. Fire EMS, Commissioner Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very briefly, the Public Safety Committee is going to meet in July, and I just want to thank our dedicated volunteer firefighters for their service, and as well as our EMS personnel and our from STEMS. So they do a great job for us. And just this public service announcement, you can purchase a STEMS membership for $40 a year for $50 for a family. And that will cover ambulance transport free of charge in most cases. So think about that. It's something that all of us should do to support STEM. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Recreation Commissioner Johnson.
No report.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning Commissioner Rothrock.
Yes, Mr. President, a Planning Commission meeting which was scheduled for the 21st of May was canceled sort of at the last minute. There were a number of people who couldn't make the meeting, and it was decided to cancel. There was a zoning hearing board meeting on the 6th of June, and there were 4 variances requested, and I believe they were all granted. Is that correct, Ms. Luke? I stayed for part of the meeting, but didn't stay for the whole meeting. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
So they involved placement of a garage in a right-of-way or within the setback off of an alley, a dog grooming business, and a couple of variances on signs along Union Deposit Road. And they were all granted. And that's my report.
All right. I would just note that at this point, we have not heard a motion, obviously, nor a second on your request, so I would assume it's not going to be considered tonight. All right. Thank you. All right, I would note also that the board met in executive session tonight before tonight's meeting to discuss matters of litigation, personnel, and real estate. Turning to bids and agreements, T.R. Stoner, General Contractor, Mr. Grubik.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. As you know, the Veterans Park and Restroom Improvement Project is well underway. It's moving along nicely. It is on schedule to be done sometime in mid to late July. And before you this evening is application for payment number 5 to the contractor T.R. Stoner in the amount of $41,372.25, and I would recommend that the approval be granted.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions?
I do have a quick question. When is the park scheduled to be finished? I know you would have said, I know someone would have said it sooner.
This particular contract is scheduled to be done mid to late July.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Anything else before we vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Vehicles for sale. Anyone looking for an authorization to sell?
That is correct, Mr. President. Yep.
Motion?
There it is.
Second, oh. So moved?
Moved and seconded. Just for the record, it's a 2010 Ford Explorer XLT and a 2011 GMC Sierra 1500. And I assume these would go up on Municipid?
These were posted on Municipid. They've already been posted. So this is the authorization to transfer the asset as opposed to just authorize the offering for sale. Again, as the President noted, it's a 2010 Ford Explorer. The high bid that we had received through Municipid was $6,100. And then there was a 2011 GMC Sierra 1500. The high bid for that came in at $10,677. As I had noted, the offers are generally consistent with the anticipated values based on Kelly Blue Book. So we're recommending acceptance of these 2 offers.
Very good. All right, it's been moved to second. Any other comments?
I have a question. Since I've been commissioner, we've had a number of occasions where we have authorized the sale of vehicles, but I don't recall that we ever authorized the purchase of vehicles. Is that something that we do?
You do. You have authorized in the beginning of the year. These are actually vehicles that you had authorized lease through Enterprise Fleet Management. So they're not being purchased, but they're being leased. But you have authorized those contracts in the past, yes.
Okay. I have a concern that I have expressed
Sure.
to Dave and to others regarding. I happen to be following Municipid for a number of reasons. And I see that every vehicle we have sold has a V8 engine that gets 10 to 12 miles to the gallon.
Sure.
And if we're going to be pursuing something we're going to call sustainable Susquehanna, I think we need to take a look at our carbon footprint, maybe,
Absolutely.
when we're buying vehicles, and buy something that certainly is appropriate for the use. If we need a strong vehicle like that, then we do. But I'm not sure we need it in all cases.
Yeah.
And I hope that we're taking a look at the
Yeah, a series of the SUVs that have been disposed of have been replaced by sedans, four-cylinder sedans that at some point were purchased SUVs. Again, some of that is a function of how these vehicles have come down to these respective departments. Many times they've come through the police department, so they were purchased for one purpose, and then they're transferred
Repurposed, essentially.
as the fleet kind of ages at the police department level. Not in all cases, but in some cases, that's why you're seeing these SUVs being disposed of. In other circumstances, they are need based on public works activities and those kinds of things. But the commissioner did note this concern, and it is obviously something that we think about as we're replacing vehicles. And there have been circumstances where we've quote unquote downsized vehicles based on what our actual need is, as opposed to convenience. So,
Thank you.
Dave, since you've been here, have we downsized our fleet?
yeah, we have. We've reduced the number of vehicles as well. We had a number of the reason you're seemingly selling a lot of vehicles is we had a number of vehicles again that were purchased vehicles that were transitioned through the fleet and were being used in different purposes. And we have in turn reduced the number of vehicles that are quote unquote sitting around, if you will, or being underutilized. So in circumstances where vehicles are significantly underutilized, we're looking at things like the potential of renting for a short period of time as opposed to having a passenger van sitting in the municipal parking lot for the majority of the year.
Right.
So, yep.
Mr. President, if I may, just so that the public has a clearer picture of what we're talking about.
Sure.
Aside from the highway department, which has specific needs, and the police department, which has specific needs, we don't have that many vehicles.
That is correct.
If you take those
Yeah.
two out of the equation, it's
That-
not like the township has a parking lot full of vehicles for
Yeah,
employees.
that's a fair statement.
Of
Yep.
four-cylinder
Yep,
sedans.
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
There's
Just
three.
wanna paint a clear picture.
There's three sedans that are essentially in
Three
the
sedans,
in
that's
the
what we're
in the
talking
in the
about.
quote unquote
Okay, good.
municipal fleet. Again, as you know, you own also a lot of the fire apparatus and the vehicles associated with duty cars and so forth. So. Again, it may seem as though you're selling a lot of assets, but as the commissioner points out, those assets are not sitting here in the municipal parking lot.
And they're not personal vehicles.
And they're
just
not-
vehicles
correct,
that
correct.
staff uses during out the
Cor-
course of the day to do business.
That is correct, yes. Yep.
Just clarifying that.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next up is ordinances. Ordinance 1808. This is an ordinance that would allow the establishment, as discussed in our hearing right before this meeting, allow the establishment of brewery, distillery, winery, brew pubs, microbrewery, microdistillery, micro winery uses in certain zoning districts within the township. Somebody want to address this before we consider it? Mr. Kratzer or Betsy or Mike? Anybody?
Somebody?
Crickets? Just give us a
You
little
do the short straw,
description, if
Betsy.
you would, so the viewing public can
Sure.
understand what we're doing.
So this is an ordinance to allow breweries, wineries, distilleries, microbreweries, micro wineries, micro distilleries, and brew pubs. The ordinance provides definitions for these uses. It also provides locations. They would be allowed in commercial neighborhood, commercial highway, mixed use 1, mixed use 2, and the traditional neighborhood development. For all but the large breweries, distilleries, those would be allowed in the industrial zone. It also provides for parking requirements for the uses, as well as loading and unloading requirements, depending on the size of the facility.
Again, just to note, Mr. President, the ordinance has been reviewed by both the Susquehanna Township Planning Commission and the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission. Both have recommended approval of the proposed text amendment.
Right, and just to reiterate, as Commissioner Fleming pointed out, we did have a hearing on this very topic right before this meeting tonight, so,
Okay.
public hearing.
Betsy, what's a micro winery?
Just a small, it's not a huge winery facility, it's just a smaller one. It depends on the number of barrels of wine that they would sell a year. That's how they're basically defined. So I think it's under 100,000 or less is considered a micro winery.
Okay.
And the zoning districts that this would target are generally what? Non-residential areas, of course.
Yes, they're
Correct.
non-residential areas, commercial, retail type of facilities. So they either have shopping centers or small restaurant type of facilities already.
For those who may not know, microbrewery, can you give an example of, I mean, I understand what that is, but can you give an example of what a microbrewery is, like size-wise, some kind of comparison that a resident may understand? In other words, it's not a huge bottling facility.
Correct. I think Trogs would be considered a brewery itself, so that would only be allowed in the industrial zone if we had something similar to that, because it's very large. Microbrewery is going to be smaller based on the volume. But it allows different uses, so it allows a restaurant as well as the brewing of the liquor and retail sales as well. So there's kind of a mix of uses. You can also have a tasting room in that. Size-wise, I would say it would probably be comparable to maybe like a CVS at the largest, but it's probably smaller than that. A regular retail restaurant.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's helpful.
If people are familiar with Appalachian Brewing Company on Cameron Street, would that be an example? Since they have a brewery on site, but also a restaurant
Correct.
area, and that's rather large.
Yeah, and Appalachian Brewing Company has numerous facilities, so I
Yeah.
think they would be
Well,
considered.
the one on Cameron
the
Street
one on Cameron
specifically.
Street would specifically be considered a microbrewery. Yeah, if you didn't count all their volume for all their different uses.
Okay.
If there wasn't a motion,
Yes.
Mr. President, I'd move to approve this ordinance.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments from commissioners or questions?
Go brewery.
Go brew. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, unfinished business. Do we have any?
There is no change to the unfinished business report, Mr. President.
Okay. All right, reports of staff manager. Do you have anything tonight?
I do not have anything this evening, Mr. President.
Very good. Police department. Chief? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Grubik, do you have anything?
We had submitted our report for the month, which is in your packet. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
Okay, very good. Solicitor, Mr. Wendauer, do you have anything tonight?
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you. School board, Commissioner Fleming.
Just a quick note. I just want to say graduation for the Susquehanna Township High School was last Thursday. And I just want to congratulate the class of 2018 and hope they go forward and live full, productive lives as graduates of Susquehanna Township High School. I would acknowledge the presence of School Board President John Dietrich and offer him to come up and say a few words if he has anything to report.
I don't think I do because it's not Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Authority, Commissioner Sanderson.
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Indian Wheels,
No report, thank you.
J Treat,
Nope.
nada? Okay. Communications, Commissioner Pine.
Mr. President, just a brief mention that our next newsletter is slated to be sent out in early to mid-October, just for information of residents.
That's pushing it back
Yes, it actually
a
is.
month or two?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, and Parks and Recreation, Commissioner Johnson.
No report.
I would just note under Parks and Recreation while we're there, I believe it was the 19th Tour de Belt, or was it the 15th? Happened a week and a half ago. And it's a tremendous event. It goes through a significant portion of the township. And it starts at Hack and comes through Susquehanna Township, down through Harrisburg City, Paxtang, Pembroke, Woodard Township, and back to Hack. And it's just a tremendous opportunity to raise funds for the Harrisburg area Greenbelt, and also to raise awareness of healthy activities. And I think it's great that Susquehanna Township could be part of it. Last year I challenged Mayor Pappenfuss to get on a bike instead of just making a speech, and he actually did. He actually got on the bike. So I would encourage this Board of Commissioners, let's get together a team, and let's beat the city of Harrisburg.
Let's do it.
All right? Let's do it.
All right.
Mona's team captain. She just volunteered. That's how the Army works.
I know the Army's always lead, Navy, Marines, everything.
Anyway, it was a great day.
Supporters.
I thank the chief and the police officers who did their patrols. It was very helpful. And Mr. Bailey, I think you guys provided support as well, so thank you. It was a great event. It makes the township very proud. Moving on to new business. I think the only thing we have is a couple of vacancies for boards and commissions. One's recreation and one is
Shade tree. Correct.
I don't know if we're ready, but I think I may have a candidate for the vacancy on the recreation board, the at-large position. May I put his name forward? Okay. Susquehanna Township resident. I believe he is in Ward 2. His name is Bill Thomas. He's a colleague of mine, and again, township resident. And I think he's been in and around state government for many years. Knows state and municipal government, and has young children, which I think recreation is. Part of that mission is to try and find activities for the youth of our township, and so I would like to recommend Bill Thomas. Though I don't know if his information has gone out to the board at large.
It did not go to the
okay,
board.
so maybe we'll hold off, but I have him. He has expressed an interest anyway. So just FYI, maybe we'll be ready to vote on him.
Maybe by our workshop session.
Yeah,
By our workshop
I'll make
session,
sure to
so.
distribute the material to the full board. Yep.
Thank you, Manager Kratzer.
I did get a copy of his resume, and it was pretty impressive, and he even spent some time in Ireland, American University in Dublin.
Yeah.
Which, that kind of breadth of experience can really help.
Yeah.
Is he a resident of the wild, wonderful state of West Virginia previously?
He was, yeah. It's Bill Thomas. He was a former House staffer in the PA State House, and
He was actually our former staffer in the West Virginia legislature. I knew him at that time.
Oh, okay, wow,
Going back
yeah.
quite a few years.
I think he's a graduate of the University of Charleston, if I recall correctly.
Where did he go to high school?
That I don't know.
Look forward to the resume.
You stumped me,
Maybe-
Commissioner.
maybe noted there.
And his dentist.
Yeah.
Is there a dog?
Mr. President, I wanted to mention too that I believe I have a candidate for the vacancy in the Shade Tree, but I will also wait, until the next meeting, perhaps, that we might consider her as well.
Okay. If you can get the information around, maybe before our next meeting, that'd be great.
I will do so.
Thank you. Commissioner comments? Anybody? Yes, Commissioner 1.
Yes.
Hold on,
Oh,
Commissioner 3.
3. It should have gone under my Parks and Recreation report, so I do apologize. But this Monday, June 18th, will be the beginning of our Parks and Recreation program for the summer. I know Edgemont Park starts, well, actually, I'm sure all the parks are from 10 to 2. That's what they were previously, and if it's not this year, look at the website. The website.
The reason
you get the correct times.
reason I'm pausing is I thought it was 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., but I can check that.
Yeah,
Sure.
in previous years, I know it started at 10. It would be nice if it started at 9. But if there are any questions, you could just look at the website. And that concludes my comments.
Okay. Commissioner Barczyk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last night, I know, I think all of us just about attended the event at Fort Hunter for the public engagement, and staff was there too. And I just wanted to thank staff and the consultants and all the commissioners that showed up for their support too. But most of all, the residents. I thought it was a great event, well organized, and we appreciate all your efforts. And I'm wondering, are the surveys online still open if residents would like to still give their comments on the upcoming comprehensive plan?
Yes, the survey is still open. Yes,
Okay.
It's open until the end of the month of June.
Awesome.
Yep.
So we encourage folks to do that. We want your input, and like I said, it was really a great event last night, and there were a lot of families there getting involved, and we want your input, so please give it to us.
And the survey only takes like 5 minutes to do.
It's very simple, and it's about the township. If you live in the township, you know the township, and it'll be simple.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else? Comments?
Yeah, I just would note that it is 9 a.m. So they pushed it forward. So it's 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. The playground program.
Thank you.
No, not a problem.
Okay. Anybody want to pay bills?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move to accept the report of bills paid in the amount of $923,224.83.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Second.
Motion second. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks. Out of here.